quick intro. Marc Brackett. I'm a professor of psychology at Yale University and also the founder and director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence. The title of this presentation comes from my most recent book called Permission to Feel, and I'm also a very proud board member of CASEL. And if you'd like to stay in touch with me, there's my social media channels and websites where you can learn more about our work. I'm going to start my webinar with a quote. So if I can ask all of you to just take a moment, maybe take an inhale and an exhale, and I'm going to read this to you. And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain. When you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. Just take a moment and think about how that quote resonates with you by Haruki Murakami. What are you thinking about with that quote? For me, I think about resilience. I think that, the last 6 months have brought feelings to me that I never knew existed. Tested my emotion regulation strategy. I see myself as a slightly negative chronic optimist. And so for me, this quote represents, you know what? We can get through this together. If we work hard, if we stay in community, we can do this. I hope it means something interesting and fun for you. If you know me and you know the work of our center, you know that I can't do a webinar without asking you how you're feeling. So I really want to take a moment this morning and ask you that simple but profound question. How are you feeling? Really, how are you feeling? The mood meter is our tool based in science that helps us to unpack our emotional lives. On the x-axis, it says the word pleasantness. What's going on for you in your brain right now? Are you saying, I want to approach the world? Or are you saying, I want to avoid the world? Are you predicting things are going to go well for you over the next day or so? Or are you predicting this is not going to be so good? Are you comfortable? Are you uncomfortable? -5, you're experiencing not such great things right now. +5, you're experiencing high levels of pleasantness. On the y-axis, it says the word energy. Are you activated or are you depleted? Do you feel energized or do you feel tired? And then we cross our two axes to make our medidor emocional. We've got yellow, high energy and pleasant feelings. We've got red, high energy, unpleasant feelings. Blue, unpleasant but low energy. Green, pleasant but low in energy. Notice that I said unpleasant, not negative, not bad. The red and blue are unpleasant feelings, but we're going to try to wipe the notion out of our mind that there's any bad emotion. Please take a moment and check in. What color are you in? Now, what's your feeling word? What feeling word or words are you experiencing right now? I think for many of us, we're experiencing complex emotions, like double, triple emotions. Sometimes I say we have our foreground emotions, like right here, right now. I'm excited to present to all of you to share the science of emotional intelligence. But at the same time, I've got some worry in the background. I've got some despair in the background. I lost a family member to COVID recently. So like there's some blue and red back here, right here in the present. I'm feeling quite optimistic and hopeful. How about for you? I wonder if you had trouble finding the words. What I find in my research is that people struggle a lot to find the precise words to describe their feelings. We as the adults who are teaching and raising kids, right, we often struggle to find the words for ourselves. This is why in our approach to SEL called Ruler, we really insist, right, that the adults who are working with kids build that vocabulary. So I'm going to give you a cheat sheet. This comes from the inside cover of my book. And as you can see here, the cheat sheet is 100 words that you could use to describe how you're feeling. There are actually 2,000 words in the English language dictionary that we could use to describe our feelings. So it's literally endless. So what are some takeaways? One, how are you feeling? Not that simple of a question. As a matter of fact, when I do this work, most people say fine, okay, busy. At a place like Yale where I work, oftentimes people say I'm overwhelmed. I think that makes people think, that they're more important or something. I'm not quite sure. Do we have practice checking in? I mean, really, how often do you just pause as a teacher, as an educator, and just say, you know what? I need to check in with my feelings. How advanced is your vocabulary? How many synonyms can you give me for sadness and for anger or for happiness or for contentment? And I think this last question really gets at the heart of this training, which is on healthy emotion regulation, including the power of what we call co-regulation. How many of you believe you've had an adequate education in managing your emotions, like really learning high quality strategies to support you in experiencing the emotions that will best serve you throughout the day? I joke about this all the time because here I'm a professor of emotional intelligence, and I don't think I learned what a strategy was to regulate feelings until I was like in my late 30s in therapy and in graduate school. Just wasn't language that I grew up with. I thought that my emotions were my emotions, and that when I was experiencing strong, unpleasant feelings like anxiety and fear and frustration and overwhelm, you just went with the experience. There weren't actual skills and strategies to manage. I want to add, that right now we are in, as Melissa said, unprecedented times. And that term is used a lot these days, but it's just ever so true. We know that since the beginning of COVID, there's been a 67% increase in the number of parents who reported feeling anxious or depressed, 40% increase in children's externalizing behaviors. Compared to 2018, adults in 2020 in the US were 8 times more likely to report serious mental distress. And our BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, we know the research is showing us they have higher chances of contracting the virus for a variety of reasons that are around equity, greater need for food and shelter, less access to high quality health care, and we also know that our Black Americans have the greatest mortality rates, 2.3 times higher than white Americans. Back when I launched the CASEL CARES webinars in March, we asked 6,000 educators, maybe you were part of that survey, how are you feeling? And there's the word on the left, anxiety. Anything else? No, anxiety. All right, worry, uncertainty, frustrated, overwhelmed. We decided in July to launch another survey. We had a couple of thousand people in the middle of July answer the question, well, how do you anticipate you're going to feel at the beginning of the school year? I mean, look at it. The words look almost identical, anxiety. So I think it goes without saying, although I've said it 3 times already, that we are living in a very anxious, uncertain world. But there's something interesting here. In our research, we're also interested not in our felt experience in the moment, but also our hoped for feelings. And I think we should all take a moment and digest this slide. When we asked thousands of teachers, how do you want to feel? They didn't say anxious, overwhelmed, or afraid. They said excited, confident, safe, happy, supported. Take a moment and ask yourself, are you feeling any of these emotions right now? Are you giving yourself the permission to experience these emotions? One thing that I want to share with you is something I think is very important, which is that we tend to think of our emotional lives as being very singular, meaning that I'm anxious, and that means I can't feel, positive emotions or pleasant emotions. And I want to just wipe that out of your brain. I hereby now give you the permission to be anxious and accept that anxiety, because believe me, there's a lot to be anxious about. But don't allow that anxiety to have power over all of your other emotions, right? You're teachers. You care about kids. You want to engage kids. You want to be the best possible instructors. And to do that, you need some excitement. You need some confidence. And of course, you want to feel safe and supported. So the lesson right from the beginning is you can experience unpleasant and pleasant emotions. And I'm urging you to give yourself the permission to experience some joy and excitement. You deserve it. When we look at our emotional lives big picture, right, we see that we are out of emotional balance, right? We're experiencing those emotions on the left. Again, they're not bad emotions, they're just unpleasant. I think the way to think about that is for how long are you feeling them and how intense? And if it's a long amount of time and high in intensity, then that's something we really need to consider. And at the same time, we say we want to be excited and happy and joyful and fulfilled and calm and satisfied. So what's the take home here? It looks like we're spending about 90% of our days in that left side. We want to experience more of the right side. So what's the goal? Well, our vision at the Center for Emotional Intelligence is to use the power of emotions to create a healthier and more equitable, innovative, and compassionate society. And I believe in all my heart that the first step in this process is to give yourself the permission to feel. So I'd like you to just take a moment and think about what that means to you. What would it mean right here, right now, to give yourself the permission to be your true, full, feeling self? Just take a moment and think about it. What does it mean to give oneself that permission to feel? When I was writing my book called Permission to Feel, a lot of people were like, I don't know about that title. It's a little too fluffy, a little too soft. And I said, no, I think this is the beginning of the journey. You can't start learning all these SEL skills until you've given yourself the permission to be your true feeling self. What might be the barriers for you to be your true feeling self? Some of you know my story. I just want to go briefly into it. I had a difficult childhood. Sadly, I was abused by a neighbor when I was a child. For many years, it went untold because of threats and very unfortunate circumstances. I was also terribly bullied in school. I hated school. I was a C and D student. So it's very weird for me now to be a professor at a place like Yale, but I was a failing student. That's why I'm very skeptical of longitudinal research in some circumstances, that we can't make predictions about children early in life, because with good intervention and good supports, everything can happen. I'm living proof of that. Now, I suffered a lot. I didn't talk about my feelings because I grew up in a family where my mom was very anxious and she would say things, don't tell me what's happening, I'll have a nervous breakdown. And my father was, toughen up, son, toughen up. I now have a 5th degree black belt in the martial arts and I'm still not a tough guy. I'm not even sure what that means. But I learned very early in my life that I couldn't talk to my mom about my feelings because she'd have a breakdown. If I told my father what was going on, he would just tell me to toughen up. And I was blessed that I had an uncle, my mother's brother, who I dedicate my career to, who was a teacher, middle school teacher in New York State in the Catskill Mountains, who was writing a curriculum back in the 60s and 70s to teach kids about feelings through history. I was blessed that he would sit with me in the backyard of my home in the summers, especially when I was a teenager, and we would just have these really rich conversations. And I argue that he was the only adult who gave me the permission to feel. And so I wonder, did you have an Uncle Marvin? Was there someone for you who provided you the space to be your true feeling self? Who was that person? Many people tell me they didn't have that person. I wonder, when you think about that person or the hypothetical, what were that person's characteristics? When you think about the people in our lives who give us that permission to feel, what kind of people are they? And so I've done some research on this, of course, and I've asked tens of thousands of people over the last year, what are the characteristics of people who give you the permission to feel? And look at that, compassionate. They give you unconditional love, empathic, validating, non-judgmental, supportive, accepting, attentive, encouraging, patient, inviting, genuine, open, not a fixer. They show their own vulnerability. Just take a moment and think about that. When you see these words, how do you feel? Is there someone in your life right now who shows up for you this way? You know, it's very interesting. When I was on my book tour back last fall, people came up to me and said something like, well, gosh, Mark, your uncle was your hero, your savior. I said, totally. And then somebody said to me, well, Mark, for whom are you an Uncle Marvin? And it really made me step back and reflect. Am I giving back? Am I being that person for myself? Am I showing self-compassion, self-empathy, being non-judgmental? But also, am I giving that to others? So I ask you to just think about how you might become an Uncle Marvin, not only for yourself, but for your family and your students. And the reason why I bring all this up is that we know from science that emotions matter for everything. Attention, memory, and learning. The reason why I was a failing student is not because of my IQ. I mean, I hate to be immodest, but I'm a smart guy. I was unable to function as a kid because I was in fight or flight mode all day long. Emotions matter for decision making. We've done research which shows that how teachers feel literally influences the way they evaluate students. Relationship quality. Think about it. Emotions are signals to approach or avoid. We as teachers, right, we're having a lot of feelings these days, and they drive us to want to approach people or avoid people. How people display emotions, approach, avoid, our physical and our mental health. So we've done research which shows that the culture and climate of our schools influences how teachers feel. In turn, affects your mental health, your burnout, your stress-related absences. And finally, I'm sure you know this, but how you're feeling every day as an educator is influencing your ability to be creative and also your overall performance, as well as your students. So here's a big question. Are you like Uncle Marvin, or are you like some of my colleagues here at the university? The example of the non-Uncle Marvin is a professor who I met recently at a presentation, and I gave a talk on emotional intelligence, and he looked at me and he said, "What happened to Yale?" I was like, "Oh yeah." And then he says, "This is Yale University. We produce Nobel laureates, not nice people." I was thinking to myself, my goodness, we'd have a lot more Nobel laureates if you wouldn't work here. Of course, I didn't say that because I'm the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence, but I think you get what I'm thinking. That's the emotion judge. How many of you want to work with someone who has that mindset about feelings? Maybe some of us grew up with parents who had that mindset about feelings. The emotion scientist, which I hope all of you will strive to become, accepts all emotions as information, sees emotions as ephemeral, they come and go, is open and curious and reflective, is in learner mode. They really want to get to know themselves and others, wants to get granular and specific. Am I stressed or am I overwhelmed? For years, I misdiagnosed my own emotions, and I'm an emotion scientist. I call myself stressed, but I was really overwhelmed. And I was doing all this yoga and mindfulness that was helping a little bit, but until I got things off my plate, the overwhelm didn't go away. And let me ask all of you, how many of you have failed at regulating your emotions over the last couple of months? Like you've just done something and you're like, I can't believe it. I mean, I have said things that I never knew could come out of my mouth to my family. My mother-in-law has been living with us for 7 months. She came in March just before COVID hit, was supposed to go home. She's from Panama and ended up being here for 6.5 months. It's been interesting. To give you an idea of what it's like, there was a point where she looked at me and she said, I can't believe you're the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence. It's like, okay. Emotion judge. Emotions are error, they're weak. If I feel this way, it's never going to go away. I'm critical, I'm closed, I ignore the feelings. I attribute emotions to people instead of finding how they actually feel. Good or bad, fixed mindset. So my dad had a fixed mindset. He would say things like, son, this is how I deal with my anger. Deal with it. Okay, Dad. 10 years of therapy and 25 years trying to write curriculum in social emotional learning. Thank you. So we give ourselves the permission to feel. We become emotion scientists. Then we have to learn the skills to recognize our own and others' emotions, to understand their causes and consequences, to label them accurately, to express them in ways that are helpful, and to learn strategies to regulate them. So we're going to focus on emotion regulation for our last about 15 minutes together. The thoughts and actions that we use to prevent unwanted emotions, reduce the difficult ones, create the emotions that we want to have, like excitement, maintain maybe a sense of calm, or enhance emotions in order to promote well-being, build positive relationships, make good decisions, and attain goals. There's many forms of emotion regulation. There's what we do to manage ourselves, how we help others, and then literally providing others with strategies. So a few very important things about emotion regulation. The first, not all emotions are created equal. The 90s were my anger years, kind of like gotten over my anger. Now I'm just chronically overwhelmed. That's my tough one. Emotion regulation is specific to the person, who you are, your culture, your background, your family history, your personality. They're developmental. They're specific to the situation and relationship. Some of us are better at regulating with certain people than other people in certain contexts and other contexts. We need a lot of practice to unlearn some of those bad habits. The one I learned from my mother is negative talk. My mother used to say this all the time. I'm having a breakdown. A couple months ago, sitting at home, my mother-in-law was driving me crazy, my partner was driving me crazy, our 2 puppies were driving me crazy. I'm like, I'm having a breakdown. Like, thanks, Mama. Gotta unlearn those. Remember, emotion regulation is not about control. It actually makes me angry when people think of this as a skill that controls people, like kids, in underserved communities, they should be controlled. The opposite. The goal of emotion regulation is to help children use their emotions wisely so they can achieve their own set goals and dreams. We need to be an emotion scientist about our strategies. We got to check in with them. Is that strategy working for me, or am I being a little delusional about it? Is it helping me make good decisions? And I want to end by saying of this slide, there is no such thing as a correct or incorrect strategy. What I need to use to support me may be different than what you need to use to support you. And we as educators, our goal should be to help our students and ourselves become scientists to explore the full range of strategies so that we can build a tool bag that works for us. And the one that works for me may not work for you, and that's just fine. And I think why this is hard for a lot of us is that we want to project, like, I like whatever I like, and you should like that too. Or this works for me, so it should work for you. That's the emotion judge operating. The compassionate explorer, emotion scientist, is constantly working with others to help them find the strategies that work best for them, and also exploring for the self. We know we have a lot of stress, but also our mindset around stress is really important. There is good stress. I always joke, I like to hire people who are moderately stressed out, where they get stuff done. We don't want people who are just calm all the time. It's when stress becomes distress that we have to worry. when it's the stress that makes us not sleep well at night. It's a stress that for survival, the stress in abusive relationships, the stress, especially with a tremendous amount of catastrophic thinking. That's when our immune systems become compromised. That's the stress that we have to help ourselves to experience less of and make sure that we help our students experience less of. So the strategies. As you can imagine, the first strategy is permission to feel. The very first is acceptance. There's no, it's not, when we regulate emotions, it's not like we're gonna not feel it. It's not like I'm gonna wipe away my anger or my anxiety. It's not the way the brain works. It's not the way life works. So first is permission to experience, express all of them. Self-care. Think about your biological self-care, your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise. I'm not going to spend much time on this. I spent a lot of time in my last webinar on this, but please remember that your sleep, your nutrition, and your exercise all influence whether or not you can use these strategies effectively. They are strategies in and of themselves, and they influence your use of other strategies. Think about it. It's hard to be your best teacher self when you're tired, when you're hungry, when you have not given yourself that movement that you need to get the endorphins in your body. We're going to move into physiological regulation now, and we're going to do a little mindful breathing. I want to say up front that some people think of mindful breathing as a religion, and I'd like to wipe away that misconception. Mindful breathing is just helping us all to be present. There's no one technique. There are thousands of techniques. We are somehow or another trained to be scattered. I don't know, but my brain can be in 15 places at once, between texting and emailing and webinars and my dog's downstairs and family members. And how much training do we give ourselves to be still? So let's just try it for a minute. Let's just be still. We can do it. Let's take a nice long inhale and an exhale. And an inhale and an exhale. There are many, many forms of mindful breathing. You can count your breaths so that you can just bring your brain into a slower pace. So inhale 1, exhale 1. Try to get to 10 and notice, does your brain drift? Can you bring it back to the single focus? You can visualize things. Maybe it was a vacation that you had the privilege of taking. Maybe it's a place in your home that you feel comfy. Maybe it's a picture of someone that you love dearly. And you just sit with that image and breathe into it. For me, I like breathing exercises that, for me, help me relax. I learned from my meditation teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, 20-something years ago, this one, which is the one I'm going to ask you all to practice with me right now. It's my go-to. I'm having my breakdown. I say in and out, and then I say deep, and then I say slow, and then I say the word calm, and the word ease, and then I put a smile on my face, and I breathe out and say release. If we had more time, I would do that about 5 more times with you. I'm going to urge you, find time to just be still. It will have miraculous results for you. A recent experiment we did here at Yale found that the mindful breathing was the #1 predictor in decreasing the stress. It has tremendous impact on all aspects of your life, as you can see here. You know, self-care has gotten a weird rap. People think it's about taking fancy bubble baths, which drives me out of my mind. Self-care really just means psychologically that you take care of yourself, no matter what your circumstances are. Shake up your routine. Take a moment to just think about someone you're grateful for. Do something creative. Try a new recipe, journal, watch a new show, listen to a new podcast, read a new book. Offer to help someone in your community. We know from research that givers are happier than takers. My friend Dacker says, take an all walk. He's a professor at Berkeley. He says, just go outside and it doesn't matter where you live. If you live in the city, look at the molding on the building or the cracks in the streets. If you're in the country, look at the trees, look at the sky. Just give yourself the permission to be free. One thing about this that is just so important is that we think that we get our ideas when we put pressure, like, oh, come on, I got to think about this. And you write down your brainstorming. And here's what the research shows. The default mode network, which is in the back here of your brain, is the area of your brain where a lot of our creativity occurs, imagination and creativity. It's activated most when you're still. You never notice when you're taking a shower or when you're taking a walk or in yoga, something, when you're allowing yourself to be still, that's when the ideas come to mind. How are your relationships during the last 6 months? This is my chance to check in with you. Be aware of emotional contagion. What that is that stressed out people cause stressed out environments. And my friend Sigal Barsaid, who is the researcher in this area, says that what happens is that when we're around people who display a lot of stress, it becomes contagious. So for example, if we're stressed out as educators and we're, saying a lot of negative things or we're showing a lot of stress, what will happen is that our students will also, through mirror neurons, experience that stress that you're experiencing, even if they weren't stressed out themselves. So in many ways, it's our obligation, right, as adults, to manage that stress, because otherwise we can literally subconsciously affect our students. Here's another interesting strategy. When you're activated by someone, like I can name a lot of people who activate me, if I'm in the room with them, there's a technique that I love. It's called psychological distance. Just paint a picture around them and make it a movie. So when you're in that place where you're feeling like maybe it's contagious even, I did this with my father a lot because my father, had a lot of anger. And I'd be like, oh, wow, that's an interesting movie that my dad is making right now. And by distancing myself from it psychologically, it has lesser of an impact. Think about being an Uncle Marvin. Remember, the mere presence of someone we care about reduces the effects of stress. Try to engage in some positive empathy. Don't just focus on assuaging people's discomfort right now. Embellish the positive things. So when a student does really well, find a way to just make it a little better. When a friend of yours, shares with you some good news, ask questions about it so they can talk about it more. Literally, that form of empathy creates greater bonding. And also think about and consider being the first to apologize, forgive. It's okay. We all make mistakes. Believe me, I'm teaching my family the power of forgiveness right now. You get it, right? I'm trying to get them to forgive me, but it's a work in progress. Last few things are self-talk. I've learned through 25 years of science and practice that our self-talk is defined oftentimes for us by others. Other people define our reality for us. You're too tall, you're too short, you're too dark, you're too light, you're too fat, you're too skinny, whatever it is. And they say it to us so often that it becomes our own belief system. I ask you, how much work have you put into as a teacher, as an educator, in monitoring your self-talk and making sure that it's not creating a self-saboteur in you and learning how to shift it to more positive talk? There are 3 things to learn from this. 1, positive self-talk is about saying encouraging words in your head about yourself. It often helps, again, to distance yourself. You say things like, Like, for example, when I'm completely overwhelmed, I will say to myself, Mark, you know this feeling is impermanent. You're right. I've had anxiety my whole life. It's come and gone. Okay, you're right, Mark. Okay, I can go on. When I'm activated by my mother-in-law, who I do love her, by the way, I'll say, really, I'm like, Mark, how would the center director respond to this right now? And so that's the distancing part. It's saying your name or your role and saying, all right, how would this person respond? Or, Mark, take the high road. Whatever phrases work for you. So the goal of this is for you to find the phrases that work best for you and then help students find those. That's next week. Reappraisal. Can you find a new way to look at the situation, a new story to tell yourself? For months, catastrophic thinking hit me, and I'm like, Mark, you got to think about this in a new way. Going back to my mother-in-law, I need therapy now from this, obviously. When she was driving me out of my mind, I'd say, all right, we're going to be creative about this. How about, instead of arguing about whatever, we get to learn about each other? How about dinner is a game about our childhoods and we ask each other questions? Wow, it was actually quite fun. We did it for weeks. Third, give advice, not to anybody else, but to yourself. What does this mean? Well, if you're having trouble thinking about a strategy, just think about someone you love dearly and say to yourself, what would I tell my best friend who is going through this? And all of a sudden, you'll see that you'll come up with lots of strategies. Again, that's another form of that distancing. You can't help yourself, but you can help other people. And then by thinking about how to help other people, you can help yourself. Ask yourself this: are you managing your life smartly? Are your routines working for you? Are you thinking like a preventionist? Are you considering yourself your best self each morning? And I want to end with the best self piece. Can I ask you to take a moment and think about your best self? Really? How do you want to be seen? How do you want to be talked about? How would you like to be experienced this school year? Just take a moment and think about that, please. How do you want to be seen? How do you want to be talked about? How do you want to be experienced this year? What are the words that come to mind? Your educator, best self. When we asked people over the last couple of months, this is what they said. I want to be more patient, compassionate, caring, understanding, knowledgeable, kind. Think about that. The next time someone gets on your nerves, or the next time that you feel overwhelmed by the world around us, can you just take that breath and think about, okay, I can be patient. I can be compassionate to myself and others. I can be caring. That idea of the best self is part of a tool that we teach in Ruler called the meta moment. It's a process for not going with your automatic habitual reaction, but pausing and taking that breath. So building the awareness of your feeling through tools like the mood meter, pausing through exercises like the breathing exercises, and then through that deactivation, seeing your best self, the person you ideally want to be, and then strategizing through the lens of your best self. And we know that it works. So try it. So let's put this all together. Let's set a goal and make a commitment. Think about all the strategies we discussed. What strategy can you commit to using immediately? Is it checking in on the mood meter more? Is it giving yourself the permission to feel all emotions? Is it mindful breathing? Is it self-talk? Taking care of yourself psychologically, giving yourself that needed nutrition or exercise or better sleep, being your best self. Take a moment and think about what will be different as a result of using this strategy. How will life be better for you? By being your best self, by doing more breathing exercises. What's an obstacle? Someone said to me the other day, I want to be my best self, but I can't because I'm so freaking tired in the morning. And so I said, well, what's the obstacle? And she goes, well, I'm not getting enough sleep. I said, well, there you go. You got to work on that. You got to tackle that because it's going to be hard to show up as your best self if you're exhausted every morning. And I just want to argue that you owe it to yourself and your loved ones to use these strategies. Some final thoughts. One, I've seen this work come and go in my 25 years running around the world. So try to become knowledgeable of emotion science. Emotions are not disruptive, they're informational. Be the scientist, not the judge. Get everyone you know on the bus to understand that these SEL skills are hard skills. They're not soft skills. These are skills that are important for our life success. Let's move beyond the goal of being happy all the time. It's a ridiculous goal. Right now, we have to justify our anxiety and stress. It's okay. If we just try to ignore that and be happy, it's not going to work. It's going to hit us in the back of the head. Let's try to be preventionists, not just interventionists. Let's think how we can plan ahead for ourselves, our own psychological health, and our students. Let's get rid of the quick fix mentality, this train and hope model, right? Focusing on just one thing. Yes, mindfulness is very important, but it's not the answer to everything. It's one strategy. We've got to have a rich array of strategies. And we've got to move from fragmented models to more systemic models, right? For we, or us adults. And lastly, what I want to say, I think this year has been ever so clear that we need to work on outdated and often harmful policies. And that we need a greater focus on structural issues that perpetuate inequities. Everyone deserves the permission to feel. Unfortunately, in our society, not everyone has the permission to feel because of inequities that have been in our country for hundreds of years. So while it's important for us to think about ourselves, building the skills, these skills and ideas are in context. And so we need to work at the highest levels in our country to make sure that everyone is getting equitable access to this and everyone is learning these skills and strategies to support their goals and their dreams in life. I want to lastly say that there are tools, like we have an app that you can use to learn about your emotions, and you can check that out if you like. And I think I've said this, but I'll put it all together one last time. Give yourself and everyone permission to feel. Strive to be the emotion scientist. Accept all your feelings. Appreciate this is life's work. Be the role model. It's okay. Focus on systemic change and just embrace its complexity. It's okay. And please don't give up building a healthier and more equitable, innovative, and compassionate society. You deserve it. Your students deserve it. And on that note, I want to say thank you. You can learn more about my work, our center's work, on my website, and check out my book if you like, and my free blog. And I have a book club starting in another couple weeks. And I'll end with a quote from Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there is space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. So thank you. And now I want to bring back a very good friend and CASEL extraordinaire, Dr. Pamela Randall Gardner, who has been at CASEL for 9 years, I believe. And I've known Pamela, I think the entire time she's been there. She's a senior staff advisor for the Collaborating Districts Initiative. And so welcome, Pamela, and I think you're going to help me with questions and all that kind of stuff.
That's some great questions for you, Dr. Brackett. I'm going to call you Mark.
Please.
But before we get into the questions, I just have to say, Mark, it's very simple ideas that you presented, but things that we forget. So just the notion of the permission to feel. I mean, these are strategies that I'm like feverishly writing down as you're talking. I especially appreciate the piece around It's fine to have the anxiety and to acknowledge the anxiety, but that doesn't have to erase or knock out any of the other pleasant emotions that I could possibly feel. So that resonated with me specifically today. So I thank you. I appreciate
Thank you.
all of the strategies that you've shared with us today. Outstanding. All right. So one of the questions that we received from some of our viewers, the first one is, how can we create a culture where adult SEL is valued by the whole staff?
So, it's interesting, Pamela, because, my career, I failed for 10 years of my life doing SEL because I wrote a program, for kids. And I expected that all the adults would be comfortable just doing this stuff. And they weren't. And it was understandable because, how many of us have had real serious training and background in emotional intelligence and social and emotional learning? We didn't get it. And so there was a lot of fear around like their own anxiety, or, it's going to open up Pandora's box, or it's not my job to talk about these things, it's the parents' jobs. And the list goes on for all the reasons why people didn't want to do the work. And in the end, what I realized is that they really did want to do the work, they just weren't comfortable doing it, and that they didn't have the knowledge and skills that they needed. So what I would argue is that, adult SEL is not about training teachers how to implement.
Right.
Adult SEL, right, is about the things that I talked about today and others. It's about building my own awarenesses, understanding my own biases, understanding how I learned how to not really regulate very well because of my upbringing, and I have a lot of work to do to not be a catastrophic thinker and a self-saboteur, and that I can learn these skills, which, by the way, I think is so important, because when we're older, we kind of think that like who we are is permanent,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm emotional. Well, yes,
Fixed
you are.
mindset. Yeah, the
It's a
whole
fixed
fixed mindset.
mindset.
Yeah.
People confuse, and I did this for years. People confuse like their experience of feelings, like because I'm a person who's because I am someone who is prone to be anxious, that means I'm an emotionally bankrupting, anxious person. And I tell people all the time, like, I probably have the same amount of anxiety I've had for 30 years. The difference is it has way less power over me because I have really excellent strategies to catch it and to manage it. So that's what we have to do, in my opinion, is support educators in building their emotional vocabulary, help educators learn strategies that work best for them, and they're going to have greater wellness. And I mean, to really answer your question, it's that slide I shared on why emotions matter. Attention, learning, decision-making, relationships, performance. So anybody who's a naysayer, I just say, you haven't read the research. You got to read the research. Because if you know the research, you're going to run and start learning these skills.
Right. I love this whole idea of what you talked about in terms of putting that person as if you're watching a movie. I definitely writing down. I have a
Oh,
few people
totally.
that I'm put in a movie tonight, actually. All right, let's go on to another question. And we just have a few minutes left, but I'm trying to get in as many as possible. Speaking of the equity issues and all of the social justice issues that we're dealing with now, I love this question. Where is the line between empathy and accountability, especially when we're thinking about in terms of different perspectives, showing empathy to people who might not be aware of their biases or might be feeling, I'm demonstrating white privilege right now. Where is the empathy? Where is the line between empathy and accountability? You want to show empathy, but you also want to hold people accountable for what's happening in the world.
I agree. I think, that's like we need like 4 hours to unpack that one, because there's so many layers to it. I think the first step is for people like myself who are in a privileged place in life. And I wasn't always privileged, but I am a white guy. And so by definition, I have privilege because of the color of my skin. To acknowledge that and to recognize that biases are unconscious. Like I can't be aware of everything, that I do and say, because there's been a thumbprint, of my upbringing, the movies that I watched that were racist, right? The town I grew up in where there was racism. All of that is in my immune system, and I'm not even aware when it's coming out. And so I think that for people in a privileged position, don't get defensive about it and just be open to the fact that we all have this bias. And people of color have biases too, but they're different biases. They're just different because they're different mostly because of oppression, right? There's one group of people that have been oppressed and one group who hasn't been. And so I think that's the first step. And my hope is that what has happened in our nation right now, which is terrible and sad and an injustice, for me, anyhow, I'll just say, speaking from my heart, it has been, I've always thought about these things, but never as much as I think about them now. And so my hope is that these terrible circumstances are going to create massive change. And so I think it's time for the people of privilege to not expect empathy, but to give it.
Mm. I would agree with you, and I agree that this could be another 4 or 5 hours discussion, but I appreciate the offer of acknowledging our biases and not being defensive about it. I'm going to move on to one more question. I think we have enough time for another question. How can we support adults who have safety concerns about in-person teaching and strong emotions about the upcoming election? I'm giving you some doozies today. I'm sorry.
I know, like this is like, I'm gonna have to go for therapy after all these questions. um, again, now we're at another issue, right, which is politics,
Yeah.
and so it's not me. I'm not the judge, like it's like I can't judge who people want to vote for. I can judge policies,
Yeah.
that are harmful to kids, like detaining kids, at borders. We know from psychology research is damaging their development. So what I urge people to do is to think about, getting very political here, but is to think about policy, not people, when it comes to this. But secondly, um, remember what I said is that it's permission to feel. And so there are people who are feeling enraged right now. And my theory is that's okay. You have the right to feel enraged. And let's figure out a way to channel that rage into major change. And so I don't want to judge the feelings. I just want people to be more open to other people having feelings that are stronger than they are, that they may not understand, and be the compassionate emotion scientist around those feelings as opposed to the critical emotion judge.
I think it's critical, and you said this earlier in the presentation, of just being able to listen and to not judge, to not be judgmental, but to really try to be curious about that person's idea, that person's perspective. I think that's a critical piece of these really hard conversations that we've been having in recent months. And I feel like it's just the start of the conversations that we need to have. And we're at a pivotal point for sure.
Just want to say one last thing about what you said is that, I learned in my career from one of my mentors that the person who's really leading is the one who's listening.
Mm.
And so I just encourage everyone to lead by listening, not by saying.
Great advice. I think we'll take one more question. How
Okay.
can how can we support, and you've touched on this, but this is specifically about new teachers, first year teachers. How can we support teachers, particularly first year teachers, who are especially overwhelmed? And I know you used that word earlier about feeling overwhelmed. It's a new way that you can view that feeling of being overwhelmed.
You know, the way I would think about this is reframing.
Mm,
And what can I do to be of greatest support for new teachers? And so when you frame it that way, not, oh my God, they're all overwhelmed, because then you're activated and you're feeling that they're overwhelmed, you're overwhelmed, I'm overwhelmed, and like, blah, blah, blah. Like pause on the overwhelm for a minute and just say, it's understandable. They've been thrown into this new COVID world of teaching, remote, hybrid, whatever it is. They don't know what the heck they're doing. They're just out of school. Like, how about the mantra is, how can I be supportive? What can I do to support you? And then it just, everything becomes a more positive framing. And not only will it be helpful for them, but we know from psychology research that you feel better yourself by being the one that's supportive. So
exactly.
that's my advice. And I know it's not easy right now, but it's like the more that people, I think, support others in this very difficult space, it also is, by the way, a good strategy to get away from your own negative thinking. Like
Mhm.
for the first time, I had a family. I saw my brothers this weekend. We had like our social distancing dinner at my brother's house, and I've been going through a lot of my own crazy thinking, and it was like I have two nephews, and my brother uses my work against me. He's like, "Are you going to be the Uncle Marvin for your niece and nephew?" And so here I was taking a walk with my nephew, and honestly, like checking in with him and finding out what his needs are because he's a junior in high school and he's not doing so well. You know, it was so nice to be helpful to someone else, to get
Yeah.
lost in his life and support him. And by the way, I left feeling fabulous. So I just urge people, go outside yourself for a little while.
It's reciprocal benefit for sure.
Totally.
Well, Dr. Brackett, Mark, thank you so much for, again, I've been sitting in here taking notes, even just being a part of this webinar with you. We appreciate all that you're sharing with us, and we look forward to continued collaboration. Thank you so much.